Yeah, g'day everyone and welcome back to the Round 9 NRL recap. My name is Dane from Clarkie's Rugby League column and I'm joined by Winnie, the founder of TryPod. It was a round of upsets with 4 underdogs claiming victory. I believe the Panthers were the only favourite to cover their line this round. So Winnie, we go into round 9, what's finished now rather. So we're officially 1/3 of the season through. And for me, I just cannot get an accurate read on sides form this year. It is so tough to sit here and tip and give my tipping analysis every single week. So no doubt for yourself, equally, if not more frustrating. So how did you see the round?
Yeah, I do feel like it's been an incredibly tough season to tip for the most part, but that's not an excuse for me because I've always had success by finding the tips that most other people wouldn't find or the ones that aren't popular. So on a weekend where no doubt the bookies have done extremely well, we could still be in profit, but that's not the case. And I got it wrong from the jump when on Tuesday I said I had a feeling it would be a favourites round and I liked a lot of favourites. And then you did get Penrith, who I liked, but get a bit scared off when the coach for Souths and Cleary subsequently ruled out. Penrith rolls the Rabbitohs and no other favourite covers for the whole round, which is good for an entertainment perspective. Lots of close games, but not good for me. Had my ass kicked by the round of NRL. Like it's starting to get to the point where I'm starting to wonder, like, have I done something to offend the punting gods here? Because it's gone quite bad the last, I'd say 5 weeks. And you're going to have to allow me to go on a little spiel here just to address kind of how I'm feeling. This is our chance to react. I do kind of think, like, be careful what you wish for, right? I'll take you back 5 weeks ago, Clarkie, where we were 9-4 and I had a 1-2 round. And someone commented, really hurting after that 1-2 round, like you've got to do better next week. And I kind of think, be careful what you wish for, because 9-4 became 10-6. And I said, hey, like they're going to be part and parcel of the season. But I've been winning 1 in 3 best bets since that moment. This would be the lowest point of all. 3 best bets, lost all 3. Mixed matchup, then lost 2 and didn't hit my long odds SGMs. I know, again, I'm not alone because it was a strange round, tough round for majority of punters, but that's not what's expected from the TryPod. I expect that of myself too. So I'm genuinely sorry to people for the results and sorry to you too, because it reflects, badly on you as well. You share the stage with me, Clarkie, and the feedback I get a lot is what you're doing isn't working. You've got to change. Of course, there's absolutely truth to that. Like what we've done so far isn't working, but it is a really big challenge that I've got to face. Like you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's principles behind kind of what's nearly been 5,000 best bets in the overall, and you can't kind of drastically change after, say, not being happy with like less than the last 50. So while I definitely always want to refine my method, improve my method, what you will find is the minute that you change too much, you can almost be sure the bets that you leave on the table that you would have taken with your normal process, those ones get up. So even after a winning round or a losing round, I'm always, never going to rest on my credentials. I'm always going to try and find what I think is my most confident plays. And, each of the games we certainly had a chance. I don't feel like any of them were awful tips, but when you put it all together, it definitely feels that way. Again, we sit here and we can say we're using line value every time. It is significant. Like you got Storm minus 12.5. No bookies letting you on at $12.5, Same for Cowboys 7.5. It's 8.5 everywhere. And same today. Knights are a 4.5 point underdog. We're laying 3.5. And it's significant because if I'm getting these games blatantly wrong, if I'm just clearly wrong, I really do respect the marketplace and the intelligence that's there. I'm not the authority on NRL punting. There's plenty of other sharps out there and plenty of other big money that talks and that can move a line. And I'm just not seeing any of these lines come back the other way, which would make me nervous. That's typically how I would judge how confident I am going into a game. But we're going in with a good number in our pocket. For the most part, we're actually getting good starts to these games and then they're turning. But I'll talk about that game by game, kind of what went wrong individually. And I can close with a little bit more of a pledge to the followers, but we better get into the action.
Yeah, and I can see Colt and John from YouTube, they both said it was a tough round. I had a tough round. I think everyone had a tough round, but do let us know if you did hit anything awesome this round or some of you wins were a live show. So we'll see all the comments roll through, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Let's go back to Thursday night where the Panthers beat the Rabbitohs 42-12 at Accor Stadium. The line was at minus 15.5 when we previewed this on Tuesday. It closed as low as 11.5, and that was because Nathan Cleary was subsequently ruled out. In the end, it didn't really matter if you're a Panthers bettor. They score 42 unanswered points. After conceding the first 12 points with only 12 men on the field, Souths were unlucky here in a way, I feel. Like they did lose half their spine in Jai Gray and Dean Hawkins, and that would be tough for any side, let alone a side that's playing as poorly as they are. But in the end, the changes just across their team everywhere. I think you had Murray at centre, Whiten in the halves. Murray was playing injured. It was a schmozzle in the end, and I'm more than comfortable saying the Panthers were superior. They deserved to win, but I just can't help to feel a little bit sorry for Souths in that one. I think for the Rabbitohs, like the player that I do want to shout out and a shining light for him was Jai Arrow. He ran the most meters for them. He came from the bench. He played through that shoulder injury, which was his first game back. He made the second most tackles with 38. When they did score that runaway try winning, he was the only Rabbitoh on side. So just a big shout out to Jai Arrow. He had a lot of effort. In the end, Panthers far too dominant as reflected in their 10 line breaks to the Rabbitohs 1. Defensively, they only missed 18 tackles, so an all-round brilliant performance by the Panthers. How did you see this one, and what sort of score could we have seen if Nathan Cleary played, in your opinion?
That's a tough one, eh? So before the game, I was kind of saying I could only play Penrith, but then you hear Cleary's out, and you're like, well, if people thought maybe South would break that 14-game losing streak against the spread, they might have got a really good number in their pocket because the line come in from like 15.5 to maybe even 11.5 and ultimately settled at 12.5. JD relieved of his duties, and I kind of pushed back. You talked about there being a myth of the bump with the new coach. I do believe it does happen because the new person in charge, in this case, it's Ben Hornby. You know, players are fighting for their spots again. Like if the messages weren't being heard by the previous coach, it's often the case when they're relieved of their duties. I think sometimes you do get that spike. And the crazy thing is we saw it at the beginning of the game. It's 12-0 Souths, and I really thought, like, upsets on here just because they've been so down and out and so downtrodden. Now they believe, you know, they got a good start. They got everything you can ask for. But Penrith are such a relentless and strong team, didn't panic, fought their way back. 12-0 is the same score that Penrith fought back from in that prelim a couple of years ago and also won that 20+. So I thought just Penrith was piling on the pressure. I can't remember who was Sinbin for Souths. Like that was a bit of a game changer in the first half, which allowed Penrith to get on top. And also just think the reason that the scoreline blew out, as well as the misfortune Souths are suffering, as you say, like Hawkins does his quad kicking off. Jai Gray injured again, like you said, Murray. On top of that, the discipline's not there. Like they get done for like a driver that takes away a try, then Whiten may have grounded it, and instead it's a penalty to Penrith. They got done that many 2 or 3 men in the tackle strips. Like I just find that such bad discipline. You're never going to get away with those, and it's almost just like the lazy option. And the ultimate example of being lazy was when the kick goes in behind. A couple of times actually, the kick chase was poor, but particularly the one that sets up the 80-meter try for Penrith, where there's nobody chasing a kick, but at the same token, nobody is back to the 30-meter line to defend Penrith's 20-meter restart. So they streak away. That's tailor-made for an 80-meter try there, you know, and it's an absolute blowout in the end. And just a couple of random stats. I don't know if you heard this one. It's the first weekend of May. All 3 May brothers score. I'm told that even Tyrone May scored in the Super League. And of course, we've got Taylor May and Tyrell May for the Roosters the next day. And Ben Hornby, what was the other stat?
His NRL debut, he lost 42-12 to the Panthers. His first coaching game, he lost to the same team by the exact same score margin. Very strange.
I believe both Panthers had an M. Geyer on the bench as well. But so crazy, and it just doesn't get any better for South Sydney, does it? 15 in a row. What's the probability on that? I think it's over 30,000 to 1 now if you were rolling it over. Insane.
Yeah, it's wild to think that someone could have 15 games ago in a row thought, I'm going to put $10 on the Rabbitohs at the line and keep backing it. and they would have won every single week going against them. That is crazy to think about. And I'd love to know if we have any sort of data nerds in the house. Has that ever happened before in NRL history? It seems pretty unlikely. Alrighty, let's go to the second game. Friday, 6 p.m. The Raiders upset the Manlys 26-24 at Four Pines Park. They did come into this one with a head start of plus 8.5 when we previewed. Once DCE was cleared of the judiciary, that actually increased to an 11.5 head start. So the market did love Manly in this one, and rightfully so based on form. But the Raiders turned up with an attitude that we haven't really seen from them since round 5 when they thumped the Eels. And this is kind of what I predicted from the Raiders this year in my preseason prediction. Largely let down performances with more losses than not. But Ricky Stewart then inspires and galvanates his side. And on particular occasions, he gets a short-term response. Then the team falls away again. Look at their season and tell me I'm wrong. So they start with back-to-back wins. Then they have 2 losses. They have a great response against the Eels. They just escape against the Titans. They then have huge back-to-back losses. And now we get the response. Now, the difficulty here as a punter in trying to identify what makes the Raiders tick to get that response is, I don't know. Because if I'm looking for milestones or important reasons too, Ricky Stewart's 500th coaching game loomed as a great opportunity and one that I would have circled as a reason they would bounce back. They didn't. They then bounced back a week later, which is kind of a reality check for me, for the Seagulls at least. I'm sure they felt invincible coming into this one. And, we both tipped the Seagulls, but we were cautious of their form leading in. Neither of us have been too high on their wins and too amazed like some of their fan base has been online. So wrong attitude by Manly, right attitude by Canberra. Throw every single stat and form line out the window when that happens in rugby league. Well done to the Raiders. They turned up here and got the job done. Did you see that one in similar fashion, though?
It's a tough one. You would have thought that, again, it's getting early line value on Manly. You had to kind of handicap the judiciary, and you feel very confident once DC is in there. I know Olaquatu's still out. I felt like this weekend was almost every game I watched was like triggering to me because, this game, what am I thinking about? The fact that I've copped that much grief for fading Manly over the weeks. And people are going, this is a top 4 side. Stop going against them. Stop disrespecting Manly. You don't understand how good Manly is. Well, I'm not hearing that now. You were up 20-0 against a Raiders side that is under strength and you're at home and you didn't even win the game. And it's like, remember I talked about last week, like we could not get a conversion to save our lives. And Garrett comes out and misses 2 of the first 3 conversions, I think he might have even missed 3 conversions on the night, So I do think it's showing you that Manly's not as great as some people might tend to believe. But I was still quite stunned that the Raiders were able to mount that fight back. I think they had to have their share of luck. There's a spilled ball that just drops into the lap of Elliott Whitehead. And I talked about the Raiders being so young, but Whitehead back in, that veteran leadership, it really can help just keep everybody calm. And they just did enough, Canberra, to stay in the fight. And you're in the fight, you've got an opportunity. And I thought the Raiders might fall short, but I was very happy for them to actually carry out the comeback and then hang on at the end because I thought it was well-deserved. And Manly, what can you say, complacent at the end. And I think some of their inadequacies shown when it mattered, when the game was in the balance.
And you mentioned that the Raiders had some lucky tries. I mean, I absolutely agree with that. I see the Undertaker on Facebook says Manly literally gifted them 12 by just losing the ball and it coming into the Raiders' lap, I suppose. But when Manly got out to that 20-0 lead, to that point, including the Raiders' last 2 games, I think that's like 94 points. So that's almost 100 points they've conceded. You had to be thinking Manly are home and hosed here. This is a big score coming. So whether the Raiders were lucky or not, to even get yourself into the mindset to come back there is pretty special. So credit to them in all honesty there, although we do acknowledge there was some potentially luck involved with it. Alrighty, next Friday night game. This was another upset. The Roosters beat the Broncos 40-18 at Suncorp. The Roosters came into this one with a plus 6.5 head start. I believe that number increased slightly closer to kickoff because it was announced that Jared Warrior-Hargreaves and Daniel Tupou were out. Broncos noticeably off in this one for me. Reece Walsh playing his hand, or overplaying his hand, I should say, with just errors and really pushing it rather than building with patience. They had 10 more missed tackles than they miss on average. And I feel like the injuries to Adam Reynolds and the head injury assessment to Ezra Mann will kind of cause a little bit of an overlook to the Broncos' actual performance in this one. And whilst they are genuine excuses, the Broncos shown us against the Storm they can lose key players in the contest, like when they lost Adam Reynolds at halftime and still competed with the Melbourne Storm down there in Melbourne. There's no doubt losing spine players really sucks and it's hard to overcome. But even Kevin Walters was critical with his side's performance in the post-game presser, so I'm not alone in that thought there. It appeared he challenged his side at halftime. Certainly their mentality in the opening 10 was the best of the game. They did score in quick succession there. They really went back-to-back. But from that point, I suppose that's when the injuries occurred to Adam Reynolds, and that's when the wheels really fell off this performance. So I don't put too much stock into the Roosters after this one, and I don't take too much away from the Broncos. I just walk away thinking I really want to see these two sides meet again, where they're both full strength and hopefully both remain full strength throughout the contest, because it was shaping up quite nice there for a while. How do you see this one, though?
And the comment there is, can Broncos play finals without Reynolds? That's the talent in that squad still gets to the finals. Yeah, I'd say so. And you said, can they meet up again full strength? They've met twice this year. So a third meeting would have to occur in the finals. And the big question to me is, will Reynolds be back? You know, a bicep injury is a major injury, but not a certainty to rule him out for the season. So it's a possibility. And that's the difference between probably winning a comp or not. I don't think this Broncos side can win without him. He's so important. Now, interesting, you said like that injury for Reynolds was when the wheels fell off. But funnily enough, if my memory serves me correctly, the Roosters are on top and it's 18-6 when Reynolds pops the bicep, which is awful to see. And then you think that's Brisbane's chance of shot. And then it was actually Brisbane who's sparked into life, scored the next 2 tries and suddenly had it around 18-all without Reynolds. And you're thinking the team's going to play in spite and then fell away. So it's kind of like you can't really say the Reynolds injury like cost them. I think you have to ultimately just say the Roosters are a team that are not consistent enough, but when they are on, they can be really hot. And you just got close to 10 out of 10 performance of the Roosters. Like, yeah, you can make excuses for Brisbane. Like, again, this game triggered me massively. Like, on Tuesday, a lot of people said, I know you're going to be on the Roosters. Remember, Undertaker said he was sure that would be one of my best bets. I've been on the Roosters probably once too many times this year, but people know I really rate them. And then had been famously against Brisbane 4 straight weeks. You know, this is the week I'm not on them, and you tipped them outright. So I give you credit. You tipped the Roosters outright upset, and I said, knowing my luck, I've not jumped against Brisbane here, so they'll probably get blown out. And so I was hoping Brisbane would win, score the opening try, but the rest of the game pretty much went the Roosters' way. You said, ma'am, HIA, but then also losing Arthurs. It did throw Brisbane a little bit into disarray with because you don't have players on the bench that can kind of cover the back line. So the excuses are there for Brisbane, but I think people now also see that this Roosters side is on par with the others in the top 4. It's just about putting it together, because we saw them just destroy the Dragons on Anzac Day, and some was talking about it like it was a one-off. And I guess that's fair because the Roosters have been a bit hot and cold this year, but they have had their injuries. They have had outs. And with Walker, Sam Walker, 2 games in a row now, looking like one of the young star halfbacks of the competition, this Roosters side is very real. And I just think like when I go against Brisbane, Walsh and Mann and Reynolds, whoever else, they have the game of their life. And then when I don't go against Brisbane, Walsh is just off. Just passes aren't sticking. They're not scoring so many fluky tries. They're the ones copping injuries, not the other team. So that's where I mean, like I've kind of said, that stuff all balances out. I don't want to complain too much about these things. But when it keeps happening, then I'm like, what's going on here? Like, what ladder did I walk under, or Black Cat was following me? I don't know. It really annoyed me to believe that line was too long, but just not quite have the conviction to take it. And then you watch the underdog win by 20+ points.
And even though I did tip the Roosters, as soon as Ray Hargraves got ruled out, I was quite nervous. I love those comments there from Ryan on YouTube. He says, I was on the Roosters with your thoughts in mind. Hopefully some pod members were still high on the Roosters. So Ryan there's obviously, put together your analysis from the past few weeks of how you're not as high on the Broncos and high on the Roosters. And he's come up with the best bet of his own there, which is fortunate.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like because of my opinions on these teams, even though I could see the revenge spot and Brisbane's closer to full strength and there was no Radley, like I was never going to back Brisbane. Like I wasn't going to backflip and say, oh, Brisbane keeps winning, it's a spread, so I'll take them. But it was, obviously it's one you wish you could have just been on Roosters. And the line wasn't 8.5, and we did the pod on Tuesday either. Because if it was, you could have also got a first half 4.5. And through the week there was talk, there was some doubt about Haas and maybe Stags. That could have been quite a good bet, but I can only play what's available on Tuesday. It's one of those ones where I didn't even lose on the game and it felt like a loss.
Yeah, no, it's certainly tough because it kind of went against all your analysis in the past few weeks, sticking against the Broncos and with the Roosters. But it's all about resetting from this point, I guess, test and adjust. Let's move on to Game 4. Saturday kicked off with the Bulldogs beating the Tigers 22 points to 14 at Accor Stadium. The Bulldogs came into this one as minus 7.5 points favourites when we previewed this on Tuesday. However, with the news of Api Coruscant being out, I believe that number continued to increase for the Bulldogs. So in the end, I don't think they covered the line if you bet closer to kickoff there. For me, just a game of two halves. Like lots of positives for the Tigers in that first half. And I thought when I did our preview show, I said, I'm going to tip the Bulldogs, but I think there's some value about the Tigers. And in the first half, I thought, well, there you go. That's the value that I was seeing. They played really well in the first half and fell away completely in the second half, where the Doggies' dominant half was definitely the second half there. For the Doggies, I didn't think they used Viliami Kikau good enough in good field position. With early ball or even as a decoy runner, like that's what made Kikau so dangerous at the Panthers was, are we going to him or are we using him as a decoy? And the Bulldogs just used him with a lot of one-up footy and didn't really get him in those positions to be dangerous. So I thought they underused Viliami Kikau here against the Tigers' edge where they could have easily put him over for a try there against Aiden Caesar. And for the Tigers, I actually felt their halves were trying to create chances. Caesar was trying to create opportunities. Lachlan Galvin was running the footy. And there was actually one stage I noted in the game where Lachlan Galvin got to dummy half and he wanted to pass the ball. He come out and no one ran. And the teenager there had more energy than the rest of the team. So that was unexpected there by the Tigers. You expect that effort to go through the full 80, that is. What we got here for me, exactly what you can expect from two improving sides that have been down the bottom for a long time in the Tigers and the Bulldogs. Brilliant in patches and then poor footy in others. And we've seen that from these sides all season. Probably the greatest example is the Bulldogs v Roosters first to second half there. Really, I thought this game was won by the Bulldogs middle. Overall, a bit of a boring game for me. It wasn't really too exciting. Did you see it similarly?
Yeah, I haven't changed my opinion on either side, really. I think I had a lean to Tigers on Tuesday, but I was worried about the Appy, coming from the field with the injury. So then I was glad not to take the points with the Tigers. I know it was 7.5 on Tuesday, but I think you actually could have maybe got 8.5. But it is one of these ones where if you pick up the line at the right time, which again, out of 35 plus bets this year, we've beat the market majority that it hasn't actually been the difference between winning or losing once. But this would be a game where a perfect example, like you play the Dogs minus 7.5, you won. You don't get on and the line shifts on the back of the Appy news, you lost. But then if you decided that you wanted to take Tigers, Ryan says he thinks the line got to 10.5. I even saw 12.5 on the Tigers.
Yeah.
You actually got the cover. And this is the fun thing about punting too, that the game was decided. Dogs were up 8, 5-10 minutes to go. Tigers had 2 in the sin bin, so it was 13 versus 11. There's no doubt about who's going to win. But the cover was on the line. It is kind of exciting. It just happened now in Sharks Dragons. The cover was still on the line, and it keeps you interested. And if you did play the Dogs a little later in the week or on game day, or you took 13 plus, you would have been spewing because it was the Tigers that had got out to the great start. Tigers were up 14-6 despite not having Appy. I thought they're a real show chance to win here. You've got to remember Wests have come off 2 games that they're soundly defeated, but they played last year's grand finalists, and you come kind of down in class and you have a chance here. But the Dogs, while they started slow, they backed up that emphatic victory over the Knights by not going away in this one, fighting back. Second half, obviously holding Tigers scoreless, getting to the front, and then the Tigers lost their way and lost their heads. And you get, was it Seyfarth and Clemmer, both sent to the bin, 10 to go. And I'm like, oh, well, the Dogs are going to just demolish them now. Like poor old Tigers, bit stiff if you're on the start with the Tigers because they were in a position to win and now they won't cover. And somehow the Dogs did anything but score. So There's always two sides of it. Some people are thankful and others would be spewing with the way that one finished up.
Oh, 100%. You're right. The line is what made this one interesting because, yeah, the winner at that stage, we essentially thought the doggies would get home, but it was whether they were going to cover that line or not. And going back to the comments of these sides being patchy, I mean, that's exactly what we got from the Bulldogs there, right? They defended perfectly in the second half, but then they didn't score a point against 11 men. So a patchy performance from the doggies, but they get the win, and that's the most important thing. Let's move on to the next game on Saturday. We're on the Gold Coast at Cbus Super Stadium, and the Storm beat the Titans. Sorry, I'm dreaming. 22-20. I wish we won. The Storm came in this one as minus 13.5-point favourites, and realistically, they were expected to smash the Titans coming off their Anzac Day demolition of the Rabbitohs. That being said, Winnie, you can vouch for me here. I have noticed a trend on our recap shows where teams smash the Rabbitohs, and then the next week they kind of get brought back down to earth a little bit. It happened with the Warriors, and there's a couple of other situations this year where that has happened. So that did happen here with the Storm as well, you could say. I won't say it happened myself, though, because they did have an unlucky run with injuries. Like, I believe even as a Titans fan, if Ryan Pappenhausen stays out there, or if Suafai Longo stays out there and doesn't have a head injury and a knee injury, then we're not in this with 2 points. Additionally, I will say, for people saying the Titans are robbed due to an incorrect bunker decision down the stretch, I disagree there as well. There were plenty of bad calls in this game that went either way. And just because that bunker call happened toward the end of the game, we shouldn't narrow in on that one incorrect decision as the one that suddenly, cost the whole game. Because the truth is there was 10 plus incorrect calls throughout that game. And that's the nature of footy. Not everything's going to be correct. I'm still proud of my Titans here. They fought for the full 80 minutes. They might not win as many games this year, Winnie, as they won last year. But I firmly believe the building blocks are being laid down by Des Hasler that will have a future for the Titans that could potentially be the best they've ever had. Even in losses like this one, to the Raiders one, to the Sea Eagles one, I'm still seeing positives. And we won games last year where I didn't see positives. So I guess that puts it into perspective. Meanwhile, for the Melbourne Storm, I'm just impressed by their ability to somehow find a way to win. And it's always tight ones when they're under adversity. They've done it this year so many times. The Warriors game, the Bulldogs game, this game. Just an incredible footy side, man. They just find a way to win. And I don't know how they do it, but it's bloody incredible. From a punting perspective, though, no doubt super disappointing for yourself, because we did have a best bet and a mixed matchup riding on a dominant Storm result here.
And I'm as high on the Titans as anybody, so it really annoys me. So you have to critique my own best bet, which is minus 12.5, because I thought it was a great spot for Melbourne coming in full strength just about, and you got the Titans compounding injuries to key players, the latest being Fodawaker, injured after the trip to New Zealand. I thought that could be an emotional trip, although a very positive one that could also have taken a toll. Every Titans game going down to the wire, you just felt that there was going to be an off performance, because what we talk about with teams that are not top 8 material is they can match it with sides higher on the ladder, but they can't do it week in, week out. And I'm sorry, part of me is still frustrated about what the hell happened with the Titans in the first month of this season, because it's pretty inexcusable to be blown out by St. George, Bulldogs, and Dolphins when we saw that these are the same players that actually can display true grit and toughness against better opponents, to be frank, and really could have beaten Manly, really should have beaten Canberra, did beat New Zealand, and easily could have beaten this one. I won't go as far to say you were robbed, because you talked about some bad calls in this game, and I don't want to blame it on my result on a bad call, but I mean, come on. A week ago, I get stiffed so badly with the Api Coruscant slamming that try down, cutting the score 10-6. I'm playing a first half line. I know that the Broncos scored in the 40th minute of that half, but it can easily be a different game. But it's honestly tells me that's the correct ruling, whatever. I've seen a try taken off the board by the bunker, and then the bunker allowed the Tane Milne put down on the Thursday night, and the Brian Kelly put down in this game. I mean, am I taking crazy pills? Are they more a try than the Coruscant put down? So maybe the rule's just wrong, because now we're going back a few years where they're just trying to make it black and white and say separation. And I'm seeing a ball that's spinning around in Mills' hands or in Kelly's hands, in which was more like a basketball dribble than how high it bounced up. I know that obviously the score ends up that close that I can't say that one try decides who covers. but it gives the Titans a huge boost. And I do think there's a key turning point. Where to begin in this game? Like, I've got a lot to say about it. Like, I need a good result here to get us back on track with best bets. It ties into the mixed matchup, which was Storm to outscore 2 other underdogs this weekend. Had a nice same gamer, like very juicy $11 same gamer in this, right? And while the Titans score first, I then watched the Storm roll in 4 straight tries in 13 minutes. It was 20 points to 6. So we're already covering the line after like 33 minutes in this game. And I hate to say this because you can blame me for jinxing it, but I didn't say it out loud. Just in my mind, I said, Storm are putting on 60 here. Like, how good is this? Like, they're going to have 60. The mixed matchup's like already in the bag. They're going to, just destroy Titans. Nothing against Titans. Just you can't stop teams like this sometimes. So the best bet's going to roll. And the same gamer, Warbrick, had scored. Just needed Storm to win both halves. It seemed very likely. And what's the chances that Katoa or Hughes wouldn't score, when it looked like Melbourne had another 8 tries in it, and the way it looked, right? And Katoa actually had scored earlier and it was disallowed. So I thought everything was going to go my way. I was wrong. 47 more minutes passed and Melbourne did not score again. And I do think, like, again, I don't want to blame it on injuries. They go both ways. But Pappenhausen is exactly the type of player that you love to have on the field to take advantage of momentum when it's swinging your way. And when he went off, on top of that, yes, they had Farlonga on the wing, but then Farlonga had the HIA. It really stalled all of Melbourne's momentum. And in that period where the Storm lost a big part of their potency, the Titans got a couple of tries. One, I think, is a bogus put down. Like, I'll throw it back to you if you tell me, do you believe Kelly scored or not? So it's like a lot of things suddenly went the Titans' way just to pull them back into the game. And still, with like 20 to go, Melbourne are up 2, and they're knocking on the door, attacking the Titans line. And to me, I'm thinking, you get that breakthrough try and you get back up by 8, you can easily still win the game 13+. How often do we see it? I'll tell you how often. A week ago, didn't I have a best bet catching 10.5 with Eels? And they were only down 2 with 10 to go. But they made one mistake, a really bad one. And of course, they let in those late tries. Like you do when you back a big favourite. Of course, you just want them to lead wire to wire and to just build a lead and extend on it. But sometimes it can be a tight game for 3/4 of the way, and then you get the tries late. So I was kind of expecting that. And so that's disappointing that Melbourne could not find a way to break through the Titans line again in the entire second half. But you've also got to give a heap of praise to Gold Coast for keeping themselves in the game. And it's a tough call, right? If we're going to talk about Rob, specifically a strip call at the end. But like, if you're really going to pin it on one call that gave a team 2 points. So then if you don't give that penalty to Storm, then it's level. There's no guarantee the Titans would have won. It's not like a call at the very end that's like decides if one team wins or loses. And as you said, I thought very pragmatic of you. There's lots of calls throughout the entirety of a game. I don't feel like the Titans have got too many their way when they've really needed them this year. But it's a bit of a sad state of affairs that first month of this year was so bad for the Titans that you watch them play in Canberra and you watch them play Manly and you watch them play here and you're genuinely happy because they fought. Like, that's how low your expectations, not your expectations are that low, but you've been beaten up so bad in the first month that it's actually a relief just to compete. Like, Titans deserve better than that. This squad deserves a little bit better. They deserve to have more than one win this year, but here we are. Maybe I deserve to have a better best bet record than I do, but it doesn't show. So I have to cop it. And this was another loss because this game insanely just did a about turn after the 35th minute. I don't feel like any games I've been on this year have just completely flipped the script in our favour, but I can remember a fair few that have gone horribly wrong.
And I do agree. I don't think Philip Sarmient was in the corner. I think even he knew he knocked on. When the try came up, he sort of had a surprised look on his face. He wasn't expecting to get that try. So, yeah, Titans were probably lucky with that one, you'd have to say, especially based on Coruscant having one taken off him the previous week. No one will talk about this, but Tanner Boyd did get injured for the Titans earlier. But I think, like, although that is a spine member, Pappenhausen is a much bigger loss, especially because he only played 35 minutes, and I still had him as my MVP. I still thought he was the Storm's most influential, even playing less than half a game. And the other thing, Winnie, my final observation here is I remember the Storm lost an unlosable game in Billy Slater's 300th, I think it was, to the Tigers. And this was Kieran Munster's 200th, and they almost lost it. So the next time the Storm have a major milestone, I'm going to be looking at the other team just based on maybe the Storm focus a bit too much that week on the milestone as opposed to their usual really careful sort of breakdown of the other team.
But funny you say that, because I thought the Storm were always the team that really did milestones well, and it used to always, like, if it was somebody's milestone, and they had a lot of players that played a lot of games for the club, so invariably, quite often, it did feel like it was a significant player's significant milestone. And I mean, a couple might come to mind for you, but I'm sure, again, if someone went back through the history books, there'd be plenty of other cases of the Storm taking care of business. They're a strange case, aren't they? Because again, they're a team that I think when they're at their best, they're as hot as anybody. But only one win by double digits this year, and a lot of tight wins where you pick any of those games where the Storm won by 2 or 4 points or whatever, you flip one moment, they wouldn't have even necessarily won the game.
And that's my issue with the Melbourne Storm right now. I've got no issue in crediting them and saying it's amazing they find a way to win these games. But I am slightly concerned that their only double-digit win this year has been against the Rabbitohs, which a lot of other sides have beaten by double-digit leads. So plenty to work on still for the Storm if they're to get back to that kind of ultra-elite level that we know that they've been at for so long. Alrighty, final game of Saturday. The Dolphins beat the Cowboys 28-26 at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. The Dolphins come into this one as plus 7.5 underdogs when we previewed the show. And I think that was based on their round one loss to the Cowboys at Suncorp, where they were full strength. And even so, I was seeing this one a little bit different to the bookies. I thought a plus 7.5 head start wasn't enough. I thought the Cowboys would cover that easily, having lost their last three, but performing quite well against the Panthers. And I did look at every stat and factor I could think of, and everything led me to the Cowboys winning here and winning well. But in the end, their defense was just atrocious. Like, seriously atrocious. Their coach said it themselves. They did not defend one back-to-back set that game. And the issue with that was the errors they made were predominantly coming out of their own end. And so we saw them defending their own line. Not as much to the Titans v Storm game extent here, Winnie, but certainly in the first 10 minutes when Cowboys were up 10-0, I was very confident they were going to go on with it. And I started to think we'd see this game really open up and blow out, if I'm absolutely honest. But very impressive by the Dolphins to stick at it. Defensively, stats-wise, they were actually worse than the Cowboys. But what I think that was is they just controlled the footy a touch better in their own end. Most of the Dolphins' errors, for me, seemed to be whilst they were attacking the Cowboys' line. And then, of course, the Cowboys now in tough conditions up there in Townsville are coming off their own line. So, yeah, the Cowboys, 13 errors in total. It seemed like majority were in their own half. You add in that's just a lot of pressure to absorb on your goal line. It zaps your attack. But for the Cowboys, their Achilles heel, as we've spoken about on this show earlier this year, is it's their attack and how they can attack from anywhere. But they get it wrong too often. So when you're defending and your strength is to attack from your own end and be expansive and creative, that's when you make the errors because you zap from defending and you pile more pressure on yourself. What makes it even worse for the Cowboys was they started 10-0 up, so they didn't need to put themselves under that sort of pressure. So their Achilles heel still remains, and I first called that out in our round 6 recap against the Eels, and they've not addressed that. Since that game, they're actually 0-4. So I think that's firm evidence they have not addressed their Achilles heel at all. So really disappointing for the Cowboys to go 0-4 when realistically in a tight competition where Cowboys probably expected to be in the finals, they need to be winning games like this. Meanwhile, for the Dolphins, I don't think Wayne Bennett could be much more proud of his side. This was an awesome performance to come back and win this one. How did you see it, though?
So clarify that again. Achilles heel, biggest weakness is...
So the Cowboys' Achilles heel is what makes them so great is their ability to attack from anywhere on the field and play expansive footy. But the risk that's associated with that is you make errors in your own end. And so the Achilles heel is they're trying to do what makes them the best, and that is their creative attack through their strike weapons throughout the team, led by Scott Drinkwater. But more often than not this season, it's resulting in errors in their own end, which is an Achilles heel because then they've got to go and defend their own line, which zaps their energy and defense, and that makes their attack less potent. And they just got to figure out a way to get it right, mate. They did to start going up 10-0, and then just silly errors for no reason. Like
I hear what you're saying. You're talking about a high risk, high reward style of play. That you want to play expansive, promote the footy, but if it's not sticking, then it can go back to bite you. Like, I won't call that their Achilles heel. To me, what we've also discussed all season long is this team can't defend at a high level. This team can't defend at a top 8 level. I think their attack, while you said it comes with some level of risk, their attack is perfectly good. Their attack may well still be of the caliber of a top 4 side. I think there's always enough points in the Cowboys, and you got back like Lukey this game, and the dynamic edge back rowers, Nane, and he did score in this game. And we like Drinky. A year ago, they were talking about would he be a bolter for New South Wales, but that's all kind of cooled off because the Cowboys' form has fallen away so badly. But you come back home, as you say, you've lost 3 in a row. I felt for sure there's enough points in North Queensland. I laid the 7.5, and I just think they're well beaten. I actually think it wasn't even that close as 28-26 because Cowboys scored 2 tries that are just total gifts, right? One is just a spilled bomb by the Dolphins, and Cowboys just pouncing it and score. And the other is the final play of the first half. The Cowboys, there's nothing on it. It's literally the final second of the half, and they grubber the ball in behind. And I think Katoa's trying to get it, gets a bad bounce, spills it, and the Cowboys fall on that one as well. So of the Cowboys' 5 tries, they only scored probably 2 or 3 genuine ones, whereas the Dolphins scored all 5 legit tries. That's just not good enough. How can you give up 28 points to a Dolphins side that has no Farnworth, no Hammer, no Flegler? Who else am I missing? Top line stars. I keep saying Gilbert, but you kind of got to get over that. But it's still one of their best players from the preseason. That is more points the Dolphins scored last night in North Queensland than a full-strength Penrith with Nathan Cleary scored the previous week. So the Cowboys actually impressed me by hanging in there, being down 20 to Penrith, fighting back, having a chance to win. This game, North Queensland wins the game. These are the type of bets that I want over and over. I want a team who feels like their season's on the line, who desperately needs to win, and they're the better team, and they're at home, and they're healthier. What am I missing? But what I got wrong about this game is that the Dolphins defended with more desperation than North Queensland. It's as simple as that. When the Dolphins had to hold their line, they could. And when the Dolphins got down into the red zone for North Queensland, more often than not, it ended with a well-executed Finn's try. So that's just a level of defense that gives grave concerns about the Cowboys. What's wrong with them now? 4 losses in a row, a couple of them pretty ugly as well. And their season's on the brink at this point. And for the Dolphins, my biggest disappointment is that as a Dolphins fan, I couldn't enjoy that one bit because my greatest allegiance is, of course, to the pod. But I'm still very proud of that effort to go up there undermanned and not make excuses, because it seems like we see good teams every week. When a key player's injured or key players are out, they can't find their best, and that's very understandable. And then you've got some teams that don't make excuses, just get on with it, go out and play positively and work hard and hope that things will happen. And I would say, honestly, if there was bad luck in this game, it went against the Finns with some of those gifted tries. If you want to say that the Cowboys had a moment where they could have actually probably taken the game by the scruff of the neck, I think Trey Fuller spilling a bomb early in the first half when the Cowboys were already up 4, and Valea's only going to pick it up and he scores and you're up 10. And the Cowboys had been up 10 earlier, as you said. And that's a pretty bad mistake. And when they checked it, they actually didn't even call a knock on against the Dolphins. So it went from what should have been a certain Cowboys try to a Dolphins feed. You could call that a turning point, but how many gift tries do you want? At the end of the day, North Queensland's got to be better. They burned me because they weren't.
100%, and I think you nailed it. Coming into this round, they did average the most points of any NRL team, and as you said, they defended better against a full-strength Penrith side. So it just didn't really make sense what went wrong here for the Cowboys. And now that they are 0-4 in their last 4, probably is the point where we need to start asking: are they top 8 material this year? And I think that's a fair question on where they're at. We'll move to the next game where there's definitely some more questions to be asked. It started off on Sunday, 2 p.m. at McDonald Jones Stadium, where the Knights beat the Warriors 14 points to 8. The Knights came into this one as slight underdogs with a +2.5 line. And I'll be honest, I thought that was too short based on their previous form. even coming off a win, because I felt the Dolphins botched a lot of tries against the Knights, and that scoreline kind of flattered them a little bit there. I did say in the preview show, Winnie, Warriors will win here. But if they don't, we really need to start asking questions. What's wrong with the club? Well, here we are. What is wrong with the Warriors? For mine, I had to think about it quickly before we went live. I think it's their attack. Now, I know they scored 20-plus points against the Titans and Seagulls, but when we saw the Titans and Seagulls play, they both linked 30-plus points. So defense clearly not a strong point for the Titans or the Seagulls this year either. It could be a factor where Luke Metcalf is severely underrated in the halves there. It could be Tamari Martin underperforming, or it could be Sean Johnson playing through an Achilles injury, which the coach has admitted he needs to have a break from. Potentially a combination of all three. Whatever the factor is, the Warriors have dropped significantly in my eyes. Even coming into this round, I still held them as fringe contenders. I still thought on their day they can be in the top 4 and beat anyone. They've still got a fair bit to figure out here. In their defense, this weather did absolutely not help them. And the Knights actually have won a game in similar wet weather conditions earlier this year against the Dragons. So that would have helped the Knights a little bit there. But excuses don't get best bets across the line. They don't exempt you from question marks. So how did you see this one? Was it as frustrating as I saw it?
If anyone's only listening to this pod, you might have heard like someone crying in the background. That actually was the background of Clarkey, not me. But that probably does describe how I feel on the inside, because this was my third best bet of the round. And I had 3.5 with New Zealand. You said it closed 2.5. Did you see it 2.5, Clarkey? Because I saw it even 4.5 today, but it may have shortened late because it was absolutely torrential rain. Did you check it just before kickoff?
I should have clarified. Sorry, 2.5 at the time we did our preview. I think it pushed to 4.5 by kickoff.
Yes. So pouring rain, and you can say, oh, Newcastle was at home and they had played in rain before, but I wasn't too worried. Like, New Zealand team should know how to play in the rain as well. And it was a pretty tight game. Again, it's it's 8-all at halftime. In the poor conditions, it's not a game you really want to lay points, but look at the final score, 14-8. The winning team did cover a small line, which is what I was hoping New Zealand could do. Obviously, plenty of comments coming through. We're addressing as many as we can. Like Charlie Chips there, talking about what a bad pick the Warriors were and how bad the Warriors are, and spelling Warriors with a W-O, which is all good. But to that, I just say, like, hopefully if you can pick that out, you don't have to follow my tips. If you can see something that I don't, I didn't consider the Warriors a garbage team in this one. I saw them definitely as a side that was struggling, that would need to lift their defensive intensity, and that should still have too much class for Newcastle. But if you see it differently, you had an easy winner there, because Newcastle was paying like $2.40, $2.50 to win the game outright. Now, again, I'm not getting any favors from the bunker. Like, to me, there's a penalty try just before halftime, okay? Because if you tackle a guy blatantly in the air who has caught a bomb, and then as he's falling to the ground, because he's been taken out mid-air and tipped over, he spills it, and it goes upstairs, and the bunker says, ball taken cleanly by DWZ, then he is illegally tackled in the air, then, like, can you give a sin bin or a penalty try? Like, because otherwise, why can't you tackle a player in the air, right? Safety? Do we care about safety? Let's say we do. Okay, we care about safety. Can't tackle in the air. Safety. Someone could break their neck. Okay, if I coach an NRL team and a bomb goes up and there's a prolific try scorer that catches it, you know what I'll tell my player to do? Tackle him for sure. Do anything you can to stop him, because why? I'd rather give away a penalty than a try. That's my options. If I don't tackle him in midair, it's a try. If I do tackle him in midair, it's just a penalty. And there were 60 seconds to go. It wasn't even like the Warriors could take much advantage of it. So, I don't expect, it sometimes does feel like the harder you try, the worse it gets. Like, I don't expect a really lucky call to go our way, or like to just get a penalty try to nowhere, or for the bunker to completely botch a call in our favor. I'm not asking for that, but it does hurt when it feels like those ones are coming against us in a really tight game. In saying that, 8-all second half, it's still the Warriors unable to score in the second half. And you talk about their attack, it's hard because it was a really gritty game, really poor conditions, and the rain really came down second half. But I do feel like the Warriors are a bit of a one-trick pony. Like, they've got that sweeping backline play out to the right that the competition just wasn't ready for last year. And did he end up winning the try scorer tally? If he didn't, he was within one. Or did Azarko get him in the final week? But, DWZ had like 24 tries last year, right? The competition was set alight by that sweeping play. Teams are a little bit more awake to it this year. So the Warriors are going to have to come up with some other ways to score points to rely on. I thought this year getting in RTS, like he's a player that should make your left edge a bit more dynamic. But I think you make a good point there that the Warriors, when it's time to execute, they've got like that one trick that they set up for. And if the defense can slide well, and the Warriors actually did score off that play, but there was a lead run obstruction on Hastings that got it pulled back. And I can live with that because that's been consistently called that way. But the Warriors have got to find more. However, in a game where it's really hard to score tries, and the fact that the Warriors have been favourites 4 weeks in a row, haven't won a single game, play Roosters and Penrith, like the two hottest teams in the comp just about, next 2 weeks. They needed this win so badly. The Knights don't have Kalen Ponga. You've got to be able to keep the Knights out too. And I know the Knights had the better of the arm wrestle on the back of some Warriors errors, and that allowed the Knights more opportunity second half. But you've got to be the more desperate team. So I do kind of see this game more similarly to the Cowboys game. Like, I'm pretty comfortable if I take the team that I definitely believe is superior and they're more desperate. And that had to be the case for the Cowboys yesterday and the Warriors today. But we've all got something in common, haven't we? Myself, the TryPod, the Warriors, the Cowboys. There's ability there, I believe, but the results are not. It's been an awful month and a winless month for all involved. So I throw those two teams together because my assumption going in was that, like, unpredictable things happen in games. Teams have flat spots. Teams have great games. You can't pick it all the time, but you generally can rely on when a team really needs a result that they're going to be locked in and give a great effort. And then you hope that that's going to get you so far. But I would say that both New Zealand and North Queensland were outworked this weekend, which was the biggest surprise of all. And the underdog was the deserving victor in both games.
Absolutely agree there. I did check while you were talking. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak second in the try scoring count last year to Dom Young, who was with the Knights. And you're right, that was from the Warriors' ability to shift that ball left and right very quick. And whilst the wet weather conditions certainly hampered that, and that's why I don't want to put this out there as my official take, but something I am watching and I'm noticing from the Warriors this year is instead of looking for a fast play the ball, which then allows a crafty hooker like Wade Egan to get out and the halves to create those fast shifting plays, a lot of the time they seem to be trying to milk a penalty. Like, there's a lot of games this year I'm noticing the Warriors are holding their neck looking for a crusher, or instead of the quick play the ball, they'll drop back on the ground and make it look like they were touched by the defender. And I think two things the Warriors could really get a result really quickly is, one, putting Roger Tuivasa-Sheck back to fullback, just adding a different layer to your attack, as opposed to Chance, who's more of a big meter eater.
Chance can play centre too.
Exactly.
So
He's played with the Kiwis there.
But I think it is time to unlock Rog.
Yeah, man, and like Chance has played centre for the Kiwis, as has Roger, so there's nothing wrong with putting him at centre. He's still a quality centre, and he'll still get you those early starts to sets with powerful hit-ups between him, Dallin Watene-Zelezniak, and Marcelo Montoya. And the other is just speeding up that ruck. Just stop playing for these silly penalties. Like, if they come, they come. If the 60 game comes, it comes. But stop flopping on the ground, looking for penalties. And I just think being a bit more direct up the middle and having Roger at the back could really help this Warriors side turn it on when they desperately need something to reignite their season. All righty, final game of the round. We just watched it about an hour ago now. The Sharks beat the Dragons 20-10 at PointsBet Stadium there in Cronulla. The Sharks came into this one facing a massive line of minus 13.5, which they failed to cover. Probably positives from both sides in this game, though. But whilst I say that, like, you could very well play the glass half full and point out a bunch of negatives for both sides as well. I'll stick with the positives. I think for the Sharks, in a derby, they win against their rivals. They maintain first place. And they also weren't perfect, which is good because it gives them enough to work on. They've got a really tough stretch of the next 5-6 games coming up. How they won their 2 games prior to tonight as massive blowout scores, I don't believe that's a possibility over the next 5 weeks, where there's teams like the Panthers, Roosters, and Storm, starting with the Storm next week, I believe. So it was kind of good they got into an arm wrestle and won here. I think that helps them over the next 5-6 weeks with a tough draw. And for the Dragons, well, they got into an arm wrestle with the first ranked side right now. And really, if they executed things a little bit differently, they could have won this game. It was a solid first half from the Dragons. Just the second half wasn't as polished as the first, and probably lapses of concentration throughout, which again, go back to the Bulldogs v Tigers. They're an improving side, so we get the patches of brilliance, and you got to sprinkle some not so brilliant stuff in there as well. I think that probably is the Dragons' ceiling though this year, when you're mostly honest. Like, they can compete with these top sides. Occasionally that might spur an upset like they did against the Warriors when we still viewed them as a top side, but they are still capable on their day of beating them, because they still do have like Tyrell Sloan, who has a bunch of X factor, Ben Hunt, who's a genuine rep player, great punch off the bench with Jack DeBellin, etc. So it's also a very good point for the Sharkies that not only do they win the arm wrestle, they restricted them to just 10 points. The Sharkies are currently first in the NRL for the least amount of points conceded. Again, I sound like a broken record, sorry. Their next 6 games are very tough, so that's another positive sign for the Sharkies. What do you think, though? Am I being too positive here, or did you see some more critique out there in this game?
Why is it a positive sign for the Sharkies that their next 6 games are tough?
So because they only conceded 10 points here and they got into the arm wrestle and came out on top, I just feel if they beat the Dragons like they beat the Raiders and Cowboys in the last 2 weeks, it wouldn't help them coming into the tough draw, because I'm not going to tip the Sharks to win by 50 against the Storm. I'm going to predict this sort of game.
Just getting experience in a tight game, in an arm wrestle game. But the only real knock you could have on Cronulla at this juncture of the season is, well, who have they beaten? Show me the teams they've beaten. I am impressed when you smoke a team, even if it is a lower side. I do think that shows a level of ability and class. But others will say, look how bad some of those sides are going. Have they played Para? Can't remember now, but Cowboys are an example where you beat Cowboys by 40. That's really impressive. But then you look at Cowboys have lost 4 in a row. It takes a bit of the shine off it for sure. In this one, Ryan said a game where you win both sides depending when you got the line. I mean, certainly the line today was like 12.5, 13.5, but I don't remember when the line was under 10, unless we're talking about maybe a look-ahead line on the Sharkies. But that might have been before the Sharkies had lose track of all these Sharks wins, smashed the Raiders last weekend. But well played if you're getting on early lines and beating the number by that much. It can again make the difference, because I feel like this game would have really stung if you laid the points with Cronulla at the end. Once they had kind of broken the Dragons' spirit and gotten up by 8 points, there were many opportunities for the Sharks to land that knockout blow, including like 3 minutes to go. The Sharkies are on the Dragons' try line, get a penalty and take the 2, which I think is really curious. I was really stunned in that little ending of the game. Okay, like the only way you can really lose is taking the 2, you go up 10, Dragons go short kickoff, get the ball back. The clock does stop when you score. We have seen teams score 2 tries in the final 3 minutes. Dolphins did it a week ago. So you give the Dragons a chance to score with like 90 seconds or 2 minutes left on the clock and be receiving the ball down 4. But what was even weirder was after the Sharks milked a minute and kicked the 2, the Dragons didn't go short off the kickoff. So it was almost like they waved the white flag there. So the Dragons had a chance to win, though, I should be said. The Dragons led at halftime, got a try right on the stroke. It was, again, really poor conditions, which suits the Dragons because it made it an uglier game. And you're right, it was an arm wrestle, and it felt like once the Sharkies got in front, that it would be only a matter of time until St. George cracked. And you've probably got to give it to the Dragons that they hung in and didn't actually get blown away, because Cronulla loves to blow sides out. 13 plus have done it many times this year. And I thought they would do it again. So I think that would have been a tough one to take if you played the line today, or, you had Cronulla 13 plus, because the Dragons didn't offer much in the second half, but somehow Cronulla couldn't get that separation. But you're right there. Some of these games tossed out some wild results. I know some people in the comments certainly love to tell us how they knew that, that the Dolphins were going to beat the Cowboys, or knew that the Knights were going to beat. Somehow, these people, where are they on Tuesday, though? Nobody seems to know these things before the games. I'd love to hear it. Honestly, I mean that genuinely. I love to hear people got a different opinion to me and what their reasons are, and I take it on board and I remember it. And I go back and say good call and well done to people who call me out and get proved to be right. But these other fellas that know everything after the game, they must be very rich, I tell you, some of the prices they could have got if they picked these. Of all the surprises, round 9 tossed out, this game, we don't change our opinion much on either team in the end.
No, I think it's exactly what we expected. Sharkies would win. It was just a matter of how much. And the Dragons, as we said, we both kind of think their ceiling is up there competing with top 8 sides on their day, but probably not getting over the line. I did see that comment from Sean around the Sharkies getting exposed over these next, when they face the top teams. And I think I should mention it because I said it so many times throughout their next games until their bye are Storm, Roosters, Panthers, Eels, Broncos, Dolphins. So definitely some tough games in there. 4 very tough games, you'd have to say. The best part about that is we will be here to preview every single one of those games every single Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Our next one being the round 10 NRL preview, which we look forward to seeing you there. From myself, thank you very much for being here with us tonight. And over to you, Winnie, to close the show.
Yeah, and I'll address, that comment there as well. Like, Bazza, where do you go from here after another losing week? Like, the thing is with punting, like, it feels like the sky is falling in. Trust me, like, it hurts me more than anybody. And I know that there's other people hurting, and it's sad to see because I know there's a lot of trust and people give their time to watch our show, which I never take for granted. But like 15 and 19, I could just as easily go on a run over a span of 3 or 4 weeks. But the people who are at my throat right now will never say well done or good work or acknowledge that. So it is kind of hard, but you hear it during the bad times. But I accept that because I'm asking for everyone's attention for a couple of hours a week to hear what I've got to say about the footy. And if I'm not delivering it, I'll get praise sometimes if we do well. I've got to certainly take my medicine and my criticism when it doesn't go well. What is a best bet? I have an opinion on every game, but I've only got a strong amount of confidence in games where I think differently to what the line is. I guess you don't have to think of me as your hedge fund supervisor. I'm not playing with your money and I'm not costing you your money this every week, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because if you don't agree with what I say, you don't think I have strong reasons for my plays, you can just stay off them. And of course, if you completely disagree, the great thing about punting is you can actually play the other side. I want to say again, we are influencing the market despite the poor results. You can get even better lines and prices, which is to an advantage to the punters that these lines move. And if you disagree, you can oppose. You can definitely get an even better number on the other side. Will we middle any of these games? I don't know, because getting through a key number hasn't helped us once this year. But in theory, there should be games where I like -3.5. Someone else says you're joking, the Knights will win. They can take the 4.5. And, what we really want to see is a game like that land on 4 and everybody wins. But ultimately, where do I go from here? There's no disappearing. I'm not going to say, oh, let's refresh the record. Let's do something different. I'm fully transparent, easy to track, nothing to hide. And that makes me an easy target for sure. But that's fine. If this is worth your time to come and tune in, then I appreciate that. And I will hold up my end of the bargain. I am in the battle of my life, trust me, to devote everything I can to finding profitable bets this year and then see how it plays out. You guys get a front row seat to that. And I take that seriously too, because losing is part of long-term punting along the way. And I need to demonstrate a responsible way to work my way through this. You decide how you play it, and I'll take that responsibility seriously, how I conduct myself, which will be, of course, to take a good hard look at my angles, but to keep playing bets that ultimately it's just a measure of confidence. If I believe it's going to win more often than not, I'll keep playing it, and we will all find out how the marbles fall at the end of the day.
Mate, I love it. I'm not sure if you're looking for me to jump in at the end there, but if you are, I'll tell you where we go from here. We go to the round 10 preview. It is next Tuesday. It's at 5:30 p.m. And Winnie, I know you've got some famous last words.
Okay, well, for those who are still here and are going to be back on Tuesday, have a great week. We appreciate you. We'll keep ripping in, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Lego.